Welcome everyone to this November 30th, 2020 meeting of the City Council's Sustainability Committee. And we will do a roll call. Mr. Clerk? Thank you.
Mayor Maria?
Here.
Councilmember Harmon?
Here.
Councilmember Sneddon?
Here.
Thank you.
Is there public comment for items that are not on the agenda? Is anyone raising their hand over there, Mr. Moen?
Yes, we do have someone with their hand raised. So I'm going to, it's Thomas Woodrow. And I apologize, just one moment.
That's fine. And Mr. Woodrow, if you can hear me, this is for items not on the agenda.
And I'm going to go ahead and unmute you now.
Madam Mayor, Brendan, I wanted mine to be for item 4. I'm sorry, this is the first time I kind of jumped in on the webinar and didn't see a place to indicate that it was for item 4.
No problem.
Okay, thanks,
Okay.
Madam Mayor.
Thanks. Good to hear from you.
Yeah,
so
you too.
We'll close public comment and move to our first item. Mr. Clerk, do you want to read that into the record? Item 2.
Sure, item 2, which is the development of a regional utility incentive programs for local government buildings.
Thanks. And we'll welcome our staff member to make the presentation. Ms. Parento, thank you.
Good morning, Madam Mayor, council members. The first 2 items on the agenda are really just updates and to keep you informed of some items that are coming to full council related to energy programming. So first, next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. So first, we're just going to discuss a potential energy incentive program that we are looking at. As you may remember, there's a public goods charge on your utility bills, which was started in about the 1990s to charge the communities that are served by load serving entities or the electric or natural gas utilities for energy efficiency investments. So everyone pays a small percentage on their bill into this public goods fund, and those dollars are reallocated out to the utilities who then allocate them out through incentive programs to the general community. Basically, in 2018, the CPUC decided that the utilities weren't doing the job that they were looking for in reallocating those funds, and they asked that the majority of the programs be provided by third-party consultants or contractors. So they are currently looking for third parties, and the city, in conjunction with some regional partners, is interested in applying to be one of those third-party implementers, where we would essentially develop an incentive program specific to our needs and our available energy efficiency opportunities, and we would administer them ourselves and then access those public good funds locally. Next slide. So really quickly on that, we just wanted to get a recommendation from the committee to forward support for developing this kind of regional program to full council. We will come back with a memorandum of understanding with the regional partners, which currently includes City of Goleta, Carpinteria, and then the County of Santa Barbara. And we'll have a lot more in terms of details at that time, but right now we're just putting together a concept abstract for the utilities. With that, I will defer to you.
Okay. So we'll take questions from the committee members on this. Seems like a pretty straightforward recommendation. And then we'll ask if there's public comment. Since we do need to take a vote, that'll be the process. Question, Ms. Sneddon?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just really briefly, what types of incentives might there be? Like, I know we're not committing to anything now, but what's sort of the range?
Thank you, Councilmember Sneddon. These funds are limited to energy efficiency applications, and so it would be things such as lighting upgrades, heating and cooling upgrades, air conditioning units, pumping upgrades, and really our biggest opportunity is building controls. So things that turn off our buildings when they're not in use, so that there's no superfluous energy use at nighttime, for example. But it would just pay down those measures to make them more cost effective.
I'm sorry, the incentive would be funding. Is that, it's
Correct.
not something in, okay.
Correct. So the way the programs currently work is that there's a per kilowatt hour amount of money. So for every kilowatt hour you save, you get a certain amount of cents, and we would be designing something very similar.
Got it. Thank you.
Thanks. If there's no other questions, I'll ask Mr. Moen to see if anyone has their hands raised to make public comment on this item.
At the moment, there isn't. I do want to remind everybody to just click the little hand link if you would like to make a public comment. That way I can see that and unmute you. And at this moment, there is not somebody with their hand raised.
Thank you. Then I'll entertain a motion from our committee members to direct staff to go forward with this. Ms. Harmon?
So moved. Second.
And a second from Ms. Sneddon. We'll take a roll call vote as this is a remote participation meeting. Mr. Clerk?
Mayor Murillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Sneddon?
Aye.
Councilmember Harmon?
Yes.
Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you so much. Item number 3. Mr. Moen, if you would read that title into the record. Thank you.
Item 3, Workforce and Residential Electric Vehicle Charging Pilot Program.
So,
Hello again. So next slide, please. All right. So as you know, your council voted to adopt a carbon neutrality goal by 2035, and a large chunk of that goal, about 60% of that goal, is transportation related emissions. And so the team is really looking to develop as many strategies as we can to reduce those transportation related emissions. And one of the ways to do that is to encourage the adoption of electric vehicles. So we are currently building out charging infrastructure as fast as we can, and we did recently add 30 new charging ports to the roof of the Granada garage through some utility and local funding. And we want to incentivize the use of those charging ports for folks that may not be able to simply get out of their cars to limit their vehicle emissions. So we saw 2 areas of opportunities specific to that. One is commuters who, for example, live outside of Santa Barbara but commute in to work here. We wanted to provide commuter charging spaces, and one is for downtown residential occupants. So as we build out residential units in the downtown core, we want to make sure that people have an opportunity and a space to charge their electric vehicle. Next slide, please. So this really is looking to remove the barriers that prevent people from maybe adopting an electric vehicle. And one of the ways that it's doing that is current rules in our electric vehicle charging infrastructure is that you have to be actively charging. So typically that means 4 hours or less, and then you have to move your car somewhere else. And that is a real barrier for someone who's working an 8-hour a day. And so this program, if you have this permit sticker on your dash and you pay the permit fee, you would not have to move your vehicle when it's done charging. You could stay there all day. And for the residential permits, you could stay there 24/7. The way we divided this up is we limited the permits. So there were 30 charging ports on top. We limited the total to 25 permits, 15 for the standard commuter, 5 for low income commuter and 5 for residential. And I should mention that the low income criteria is anyone who is able to apply for the Clean Air Vehicle Assistance Program, which is currently run by the state. It's an additional rebate program for folks that can prove they're in a certain income tier. So we base the pricing on the CODA commuter lot monthly pricing. So you're getting sort of an added, enhanced parking experience, but for that same low price as the CODA commuter lot monthly rate of $75 a month. And then we would further reduce that for the low income permit holders. And then the residential monthly electric vehicle permit, the current monthly rate is $260 a month. And we subtracted what we estimate to be the monthly energy charge from charging your vehicle. So we thought that was a fair price. This is intended to be a 2-year pilot program to be revisited once parking capacity is back up to normal rates. And we wanted to see if this did move the needle on electric vehicle charging adoption. This is going to council on December 8th for approval to change the fee resolution, but we wanted to make sure we ran it by you first. So next slide. So we're hoping to get a recommendation from you to forward your support of this program as well. So again, the support for amending the fee resolution to include these 3 new permit tiers. Thank you.
Okay. A question from you, Mayor Pro Tem Snedden.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm really excited about this. I think this is where we're going to really see big changes, and a lot of people who rent or can't find a plug and can't charge, and it's really been a huge impediment. So this is really exciting. I had a quick question about the permit, the pricing. Is that, I didn't get, some of them said for 5 permits, some of them said for 4 or 4. Is that what you pay for that number of permits? And are they on site, or is this off site, or just a little bit about that? But I'm completely in favor of this.
Thank you, Councilmember Snedden. That's a great question. So we're actually just limiting the number of permits we will issue to 15 for the standard commuter, 5 for the residential and the low income program. So that cost is per permit. So one vehicle would pay $75 a month for the EV commuter program. And they would go to the parking office that's at the 1221 Granada, or Anacapa, sorry, the base of the Granada garage, and they would receive a sticker that would just indicate that they were able to park there and they were able to park outside of that active charging time. Did that answer your question?
It did. So that's a total number of permits. Like what is that total if you put them all together?
So it's 25 total permits. Okay. There are 30 pours. We wanted to leave some open for ad hoc chargers, right? Yeah. There are more charging stations on the first or the ground floor of the garage. So there is already some capacity for ad hoc charging, but we didn't want to take over the entire 30 stations. So we wanted to limit it to 25, and then we can always revisit it if one certain permit type is getting taken up and there's a lot left in another type, and we can shift around the numbers.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Harmon, question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Excuse me, it's been one of those days. I also had a question just to follow up on that slide. I'm a little bit confused. Can you just explain to me the difference between the commuter option and the residential option? If you're 24/7 residential, does that mean you're only supposed to use it at night so commuters can use it during the day, or what's the difference there?
Thank you, Councilmember Herman. Great question. So no, the commuter permit would be limited to daytime hours. They could not park overnight in the garage, whereas the residential could park any time of day or night. And that's why it's more expensive too. You get more access.
Perfect. That makes so much more sense. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
I don't have questions. Thank you. So, Mr. Moen, is anyone raising their hand to make a comment about this fee resolution and the program?
Yes, we do have Michael Giacos. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, and you have to unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Hello, everybody. This is Michael Chiakos. I'm the Director of Energy and Climate Programs at Community Environmental Council. And really great that staff has put together this program. Definitely applaud them, first of all, for taking advantage of the different grant programs through SCE and the Air District to get these 30 charging stations. This is something that CEC we had advocated for quite some time. So really great to see staff moving forward with this. And then also for developing this very innovative program. This is also something that we've identified a need for, and it's really great to have staff see that need, which is, you know, charging for people that aren't able to charge at home and developing this great program with discounted fees for it. And you know, electric vehicles are extremely important, as we've all heard, for meeting the carbon neutrality goals. They're about 50% of the greenhouse gas emissions in California, and even higher, as you heard, 60% in the city of Santa Barbara. Especially as we move to 100% renewable energy by 2030, that means that those emissions are going to go away and transportation is going to get even higher, maybe 70, 80, 90%, we'll see. So we really need to be working hard on getting people out of their cars, and for people that need to drive, getting them into electric vehicles that will be powered by this renewable electricity that we're going to be coming into our grid. You've probably heard that the state has a goal of 5 million electric vehicles by 2030, and then recently there has been Governor Newsom has brought forward a ban of gas cars by 2035. This is you know, a huge step, but many European countries are ahead of us. Norway has a gas car ban by 2025 and already a 60% share of electric vehicles. And they went from 8%, which is where California is now, of new vehicles, to 60% in just about 5 or 6 years. So it's very possible for this rapid transition to happen. And we really appreciate the city of Santa Barbara being a pilot for making great policy choices to really move the needle on electric vehicles, and things that we can then share with other communities throughout California and the country. So really appreciate this program. We're going to really try to help get the word out as well. And I would hope that the city can use your channels to really get the word out. We have a grant through Electrify America to do marketing, education, and outreach, particularly around lower to moderate income communities. And we would like the city's help, you know, with press releases to really get the word out about this program, because it's not just this program, it also gets the word out about how electric vehicles are affordable and easy to use, even for people of moderate to low income means. We really encourage anyone to go to our website, electricdrive805.org, and
If you would
you can see.
wrap up your comments, you're at 3 minutes. I've been keeping track. So finish your thought.
Thank you. So yeah, check out that website. EVs are very affordable. I would encourage any of the council members or mayor to take a look at this site. Right now, you could basically get an electric vehicle for free or almost free if you can qualify for some of the incentives. So anyone thinking about it, now may be the time to pull the trigger. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Any other speakers on this topic?
We do, and I'll go ahead and pull up the timer as well. I apologize about that. We have Paul Poirier. I apologize if I said that incorrectly. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you now and then pull the timer up.
Hi, Paul Poirier here, and very supportive of your action to provide a carrot rather than a stick for people to get over to electric vehicles. I think that it's the future. I do a lot of shopping centers. We've been analyzing it over at Fairview Shopping and Santa Barbara Plaza, putting in infrastructure so that we can convert over as the California car sector electrifies. And I think it's really forward-looking for the city to also incentivize it for people that are commuting to downtown Santa Barbara for work and for locals. I think it's great. I think that Santa Barbara historically was a stagecoach stop between LA and San Francisco, and we can become a modern one if we provide that sort of charging station along with a beautiful city to visit while your car is charging. And huge strategy from times of old for us to maintain economic vitality. Thank you very much for supporting this action and being really progressive in terms of aligning the city's goals with the goals of the state of California. Thanks a lot.
All right, thank you. Next speaker.
I apologize about that. Those are the two speakers for this item, so there's not currently another person.
All right, so we'll close public comment. You're both up there. Want to start, Ms. Snedden?
Yeah, I'm happy to make the motion to move this on, this recommendation. It's I really love that imagery of this being a stagecoach stop. I know with my electric vehicle, if I'm going down south, I have to stop somewhere, and it's much better to stop somewhere when we're out of COVID, where you can shop or have some lunch. And so if we can be that, that's just one advantage, but really getting renters and people who otherwise won't have access to charging to be able to take advantage of these incentives and join in. And really, you can buy a used electric vehicle for very, very inexpensively now. And it's really just a matter of being able to plug it in somewhere, which is, it's a barrier. So I'm very happy to move this forward and motion to send this to council.
Ms. Harmon?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will second that. Also really excited about this. And I do want to just lift up what Mr. Chiacos said about the CEC's resources for folks that are thinking about buying an electric vehicle. My family is actually in that situation. It's something that we're planning for and considering, and had sort of thought it was out of our price range. And then going through the resources that CEC put together for the various state and federal incentives that exist and the ways to get money back really was awesome. And it's far more affordable than I ever would have anticipated, and super grateful for that resource. It's been hugely helpful for my family. So that, in combination with what we're doing here, really, I think could have the effect of moving our community very far forward on this issue. So very happy to second it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I'll be voting for the motion, and I thank staff for working on this, the Community Environmental Council, and all of our community partners, and everyone who drives an electric car. Yay. We'll take a roll call vote, please.
Mayor Murillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Snedden?
Aye.
Councilmember Harmon?
Yes.
Okay, that was unanimous. Thanks so much. And now number 4, item number 4.
Item number 4 is the consideration of the development of amendments to enhanced energy efficiency reach codes.
Okay, we'll have a presentation. I know we've received some correspondence on this, some public comment. I'll ask our committee members to go ahead and take a look at those. You've probably read them already, but Ms. Parento, go ahead, please, with the presentation.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Next slide again. So you may recall Mayor Murillo and Councilmember Snedden that we came about a year ago with a similar presentation, and Councilmember Harmon, this might be more new to you, but we're going to do sort of an in-depth dive as to what reach codes are, why we might want to consider one, and what other jurisdictions are doing. So first and foremost, as I mentioned at a previous item, we have a goal of carbon neutrality by 2035. And the three largest sectors of emissions are transportation, as we just discussed. The second largest is buildings. About 25% of the state's emissions come from building related uses. And then the third is waste. So we're really looking with this item to crack the nut on the building emissions themselves. Additionally, the building code is moving towards zero emissions. We have one of the most strict energy codes in the nation. But it's not there yet, and in order to tackle Santa Barbara's greenhouse gas emissions goals, we may need to think beyond the code. So there is an opportunity for us to look at code enhancements. Next slide, please. So what are REACH codes? Well, in California, the Title 24 Code of Regulations, which sets our building code standards, allows governments to adopt a more stringent code. So as long as it's more strict and restrictive than the state adopted code, we are allowed to make those amendments. And they are often called REACH or stretch codes. Next slide. Oh, and before I keep going, I did want to mention that I do have Andrew Steffler, the chief building official for the city, on the call as well, so he can jump in if you have any more building code related questions.
Thank you.
There are, no problem. So there are some legal requirements for REACH codes, and that is that they be cost effective, meaning that over the project costs, so the life of the construction, they are cost effective. Non-preemptive. This means that any federal appliance standards cannot be preempted by the code. We can't make it stricter than a federal standard for a fridge, for example, or another appliance. And they should be efficiency focused. So they can't use more energy than the state building code. Next slide, please. So why would we use a REACH code? It's really up to the jurisdiction to figure out how and why they want to use this, what goals they're trying to accomplish. Really, new construction is the most common, and that's typically related to the cost effectiveness requirement. And that's when you're able to really get the most cost effectiveness out of the measures. You can do existing buildings, but it's a lot more difficult to prove that cost effectiveness. We can also allow for exemptions. So if we went a certain code direction, but wanted to exempt, say, restaurants or something from a code requirement, we could do that. That would be up to the city to decide. Next slide, please. This is not new to the city of Santa Barbara. We've done this a few times before. We had a REACH code in 2008, 2010, and 2011, I believe. And so we adopted an energy efficiency REACH code in 2008, where we just required buildings to be 20% more efficient than Title 24 in most cases. It was mostly applied to new buildings, so it did apply to some larger alterations as well. Next slide, please. And then in 2010, 2011, we worked with SoCal Gas and Southern California Edison to adopt an additional REACH code that required buildings to be 15% more efficient than the state code. Next slide. So there are three types of REACH codes that we're seeing around the state. One is all electric, which basically imposes a moratorium on new natural gas infrastructure in new construction buildings. One is an electric preferred REACH code, where it prefers an all electric building and creates more restrictions on mixed fuel buildings that include natural gas. For example, if a new construction building went all electric, they would just have to follow Title 24, which is the building code requirements. If they wanted to do mixed fuel, then they would need to increase the energy efficiency of their building. And the third type is just efficiency focused. So like the two previous ones that we'd seen Santa Barbara pass, just requires an enhanced energy efficiency over the state code requirement. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we're considering at the city is a building electrification REACH code. And the reasons why we're considering that is because natural gas truly is a potent greenhouse gas. It's largely comprised of methane gas, which is one of the most concerning greenhouse gases released to the atmosphere. Furthermore, the electric grid is rapidly decarbonizing. So as you know, the state has a carbon neutrality goal by 2045. That's due to Senate Bill 100. The city itself has a goal of 100% renewable electricity by 2030, and we're making our way toward that with our community choice energy group. And transitioning to electric appliances is really becoming easier and more attractive as appliance technologies develop and become more modernized and more efficient and easier to use and more reliable. That transition becomes easier to take on. Next slide, please. So for example, the two biggest natural gas users in the home are the water heater and the forced air unit, so natural gas heating around a home. So there are now some heat pump water heater technologies and heat pump space heating technologies that are really coming into prime time and show pretty significant greenhouse gas emissions reductions when compared to the standard natural gas appliance. Induction cooktops are quickly becoming a favorite of chefs around the country, since you're able to control the heat much more specifically than with a natural gas cooktop, and there is no actual heat on the surface, so they're much safer. And then heat pump clothes dryers are also becoming really easy to find and get and install in homes. Next slide, please. So there are climate benefits related to switching to all-electric construction. Again, as the grid becomes more renewable, the greenhouse gas content of energy use in a home goes down significantly, as you can see from this chart. So if we maintain the natural gas appliances in the home, there's only so much reduction we can do over time, because inherently natural gas does have greenhouse gas emissions related to it. Whereas if you look at the all-electric building, you can see the decrease in greenhouse gas emissions over time as the grid decarbonizes. It's important to note that buildings are long-lasting assets. Once they're built, they're around for a long time, as are the appliances. We don't tend to replace our appliances for a while. And so it's important to really think about building it right from the start, and that's the consideration with the all-electric REACH code. Next slide, please. So cost benefits of an all-electric code is, the thoughts around increases to natural gas prices in the coming years, and that's related to infrastructure upgrades that are necessary for maintaining its aging infrastructure. There's the avoided cost, and this is probably the most significant portion of the cost effectiveness of this REACH code, of not installing the gas infrastructure in the first place. So for new construction, if you don't have to install the gas piping and connect to the gas infrastructure, then you avoid that cost. There are increased appliance efficiencies on some of the appliances, and certainly there's cost savings in the long term from greenhouse gas reductions. Next slide, please. There are also some health impacts of indoor natural gas. Several studies have pointed out that their natural gas use inside the home is connected to increase in respiratory disease, particularly in children, and increased cases of asthma. And also that burning gas and propane in buildings results in 6 times higher NOx emissions than from all California power plants. And in a lot of cases, there was some results found that indoor gas use results in air quality that would not be acceptable in outdoor applications. And so that's just a consideration as well. Next slide, please. There are some resilience benefits as well. So Santa Barbara is a highly seismic area. We have some of the most seismically vulnerable areas within the entire state, and the natural gas distribution system is not designed to withstand earthquakes. In fact, in a lot of areas where earthquakes have happened, 20 to 50% of the ensuing fires have been attributed to the natural gas infrastructure. So whereas the electric infrastructure is slightly more adaptable to earthquake and seismic activity, the natural gas distribution system is more vulnerable to it. Next slide, please. There are some concerns, though, of adopting all electric buildings, and you'll hear about some of them today, I'm sure, in public comment. But there are, of course, the upfront costs. Some of the appliances cost more upfront than conventional natural gas appliances, and so it's being able to invest that upfront cost over the life cycle of the appliance. There tends to be a savings, but you still need to have that initial investment. There's also stranded assets. As more customers leave the gas, become electric only customers and leave the gas model, then the maintenance costs of maintaining the natural gas distribution system falls on less and less customers, and that can spike prices and impact affordability. Choice is certainly a concern. People really, really like their gas stoves, and so that's something that we need to consider when we're considering an all-electric REACH code, is how do we handle the fact that some people just really want a gas stove. There are also resilience benefits to having the natural gas. If you need power during an electric shutoff, there are some applications where natural gas can provide that backup. It's not true within the home. Appliances within the home, except for the stove, typically need electric ignition to run. So it's really more applicable outside of the home, but that is a consideration. And there are, we did want to be straightforward with you and mention that there is pending litigation in certain jurisdictions that have enacted all electric reach codes, and they are related to CEQA in certain jurisdictions, and just to make sure that full CEQA analysis is done prior to the reach code. And then one is a suit brought by the Restaurant Association, simply because they're arguing there is no acceptable alternative to gas stoves within restaurants. So we're going to follow those closely and keep monitoring those and keep you posted. Next slide. Going back to resilience again, I mentioned that it does bring resilience in some cases, but not in others. And natural gas certainly does take more time to bring back online if there is an outage than electrical infrastructure. And again, we mentioned that earthquakes are of particular concern here. And so we just want to make sure we're considering that. And really, most importantly, we are not proposing to remove existing natural gas infrastructure that is in place. This really only applies to new construction. Next slide. So this is something that's happening throughout the state. Almost 40 jurisdictions have already passed a reach code. Some have done the all-electric reach code, which is also considered a ban on natural gas infrastructure. And so Alameda, Berkeley, Ojai most recently did it, and San Francisco, just to name a few. There are also the all-electric reach, where it's more favorable in terms of energy efficiency to install the electric appliances, and then some have just done the electric preferred. And there's a bunch more in the process of developing, so we're keeping tabs on those as well. Next slide. So I did want to bring up renewable natural gas, because this is sort of an exciting area of opportunity for certain applications that's coming up. The SoCal Gas Company and other gas providers are doing a lot of work around developing renewable natural gas that takes biogas from, say, dairy farms or landfills, and converts it and injects it into the natural gas distribution infrastructure. There's simply not enough, as far as we can tell, and based on several studies, to meet California's existing natural gas needs. And so we could never supplant our existing supply with renewable natural gas. Additionally, it doesn't address the leakage concerns of natural gas, because renewable natural gas still has methane in it, even though we're taking it out of the dairy and landfill processing. And so there is still some leakage that happens through the pipelines. Potentially up to 3% of the entire pipeline contents are leaking. But there are some great applications for renewable natural gas, and it can certainly be a stopgap measure as we move towards a decarbonized grid. There are industries that can't transition to all electric operation, and so those industries can definitely benefit from renewable natural gas as well. So for example, transportation, heavy industries, and certainly existing buildings. Hydrogen is another alternative that's becoming more widely available. It is an expensive alternative, and it does require new infrastructure and appliances. So that's just something to consider as well. It doesn't seem to be as cost effective as electrification of buildings. And then propane is worse in terms of greenhouse gas emissions than natural gas. So it's not something we really want to widely consider. Next slide, please. So the process for a REACH code adoption would be a minimum of 2 public hearings at full council, where we would discuss all of these points and why the city would choose to go a certain direction. Then we would submit an ordinance to the California Energy Commission with our code outlines, and it would sunset, unless we reapproved it, at the end of each code cycle, which are 3 years. So we're almost halfway through the existing code cycle, and the next one will take effect in January 1st, 2023. So there is another possible pathway that we're looking into, and that's the health and safety pathway, where we could establish a moratorium on new gas infrastructure based on health and safety considerations. Berkeley did this pathway, as did San Francisco, and we're currently looking into what that means, but it does eliminate the sunsetting of the code, so it would continue until we revoked the moratorium, and it eliminates the Energy Commission review of the code. Next slide, please. So next steps is we'd like to schedule a study session with council where we go into in-depth, as we are with you today, educate what the REACH code is, what the goals are of a REACH code, and then the concerns and benefits. And then we would develop REACH code language around our intended approach. Next slide, please. So we would like to recommend today that that you direct us to go to council with the recommendation of an all-electric REACH code if you're supportive. Thank you.
Thanks for your presentation, Ms. Parento. We'll take questions from the committee and then go to public comment. Questions, Ms. Stin?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick question here. As you know, I'm supportive of this, but as a quick question, is there any, I don't know, your thoughts on if aside from stoves, if we eliminated all other gas, the restaurant consideration, it does seem, it gives me pause. And also that little resiliency factor in homes with a gas stove and choice on that. Just your thoughts on that. Like, could we not go the health and safety route if we were allowing any gas, or just, I guess at this point, just a question on it, on your thoughts on that.
Councilmember Snedden, that's a great question. I think anywhere where there is not a sufficiently appropriate alternative, you can provide an exemption. And so we, even in the health and safety route or the REACH code route, we would want to consider an exemption for restaurants. For example, we also received a letter from the Pool and Spa Association of California. We might want to consider an exemption for them as well, for pool heating and spa heating. Anywhere where we deem that there is not a sufficient alternative, electrical alternative, we can provide an exemption. I do think it would get tricky to do that in the home, especially because there is a suitable alternative in induction cooking.
I would agree with that too. Thank you for that. We'll keep that in mind, go through public comment and all. Thanks.
Question from Ms. Harmon?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you so much, Ms. Parento. And I'm sorry, unfortunately, right after this, I have to jump off, but I just had two, I'm very supportive of this also, so I will put that out there now. And I just was hoping you could explain to me the difference between a ban, sorry, my dog is in this room with me, working from home, you know how it goes. The difference between a ban and an all-electric code. I know there were some cities that did one and some cities that did another, and I guess I'm not clear on the difference, what that really means. And then the second thing is, I'm hoping either today or when this comes to full council, if my colleagues vote to move it to full council, if we could have a little bit more information on what options there are to mitigate some of the challenges that might be presented by earthquake, the resilience component of this, or when there are power outages. That's been happening a lot in my neighborhood. So I'm really hoping we can just get some more information on that, what the impacts might be. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Harmon. So I'm just taking a quick note. Great questions. We can definitely provide more information on the resilience impact. And then, sorry, as I was taking note, I got distracted on your first question, which was, yes, the all electric versus ban. Thank you. I should have explained that further. So the ban requires no new gas piping to be installed to the building. The all electric REACH is prohibiting certain appliances. So you might prohibit water heaters and heaters specifically, but allow the gas stove. But then the cost effectiveness is tricky because then you're still allowing the gas plumbing to go to the building.
Okay, thank you so much. That's really helpful.
Thanks, Ms. Harmon. Well, in reading through some of the public comment, I saw some question about heat pumps, and I saw that that was part of your presentation. Can you just give us a little primer on what that is and how they play into this conversation? Thanks.
Yes, Mayor Maria. So it's a new, newish section, not that new technology that just compresses heat over time, releases it. It uses electric force to do so. And so it's just, it's as effective as a forced air unit. It's more efficient over its lifetime than natural gas. And it doesn't, greenhouse gas emissions wise, it's certainly not as impactful as natural gas when you take into consideration the system-wide emissions of natural gas. And so they're just a small unit that's a similar size to your forced air unit that can go in or adjacent to your building. And they're pretty tried and true. They've been around for a long time. We use them in colder climates. They're used with much greater frequency where there's higher variability in pricing around heating mechanisms. But yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll go to public comment. Mr. Moen, I'm assuming people have their hands raised.
Yes, we do have quite a few people.
Okay.
We'll start with Tim Mahoney. If you would like to speak, I'll go ahead and unmute you now.
Yes, thank you. Hello, Madam Mayor, members of the committee. Tim Mahoney with SoCal Gas, and the SoCal Gas mission is to build the cleanest and safest and most innovative energy company in North America. And we've been a trusted provider in Santa Barbara of providing natural gas for more than 150 years. We want to play a pivotal role in helping the city achieve the goals that you have set forth. And that's why the SoCal Gas Company has committed to replacing 20% of our gas supply with renewable natural gas. So this renewable natural gas, as you know, comes from landfills, dumps, sewer plants, wastewater plants, dairies, agriculture. Right now in California, all that methane is just going to atmosphere. We're capturing that today and putting that in the pipeline. So that's huge. So I titled my presentation today, Don't Limit Your Options, because if you do, you're going to limit your future. And there's lots of new technologies coming on board that are going to play a critical part in this. So what you've got to do is you've got to leverage existing solutions that are proven and cost effective and allow flexibility for the consumer and the customer while you're developing new energy sources and enhanced technologies. So what you've come here is you've got home weatherization, energy efficiencies. Many customers are unaware that there's programs like that out there, but once they find that they're there, they participate, and then they take deep reductions in building emissions and savings of costs. So those are options that can also be used. And then you've got the California Public Utilities Commission that recently is proposing to approve our green tariff. And this new green tariff is going to allow customers to voluntarily elect to replace all or a portion of their natural gas with that renewable natural gas from the landfills and the dairies. So this is going to be a clean energy procurement offered by electrical utilities and community trace aggregators. So, and this green tariff is supposed to be in by the end of this year or beginning of next year. So if you incorporate a green tariff into those reach codes, you're going to providing residents the choice to maintain the gas service while offsetting all or a portion of their emissions associated with the gas use. Now, the inherent resiliency of the gas system is significantly benefit to the local and regional energy reliability. So we are decarbonizing the system with this renewable natural gas, but don't forget hydrogen. Hydrogen is a technology which is coming on board, and it's going to be able to decarbonize the pipe as well as give reductions in greenhouse gases. So that's huge. And the program is anticipated to begin in the early 2021, this hydrogen, and it'll blend a level of hydrogen at 1% and may increase to as much as 20% as we go forward. So pursuing an all-electric reach code is not the only way to reduce building emissions. So you got to keep a focus on that.
Thanks. Yeah, 3 minutes went by pretty quick. But I know I have a meeting with you coming up, so our ears are open to what you're saying, Mr. Mahoney. But thank you for your comments today.
Yes, thank you. I'll send those into in an email right away.
Thank you. Next
You're
speaker.
The next speaker is Thomas Woodrow. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Madam Mayor, members of the council, Tom Woodrow. I'm executive director of the Santa Barbara County Taxpayers Association, and we represent taxpayers, which is pretty much all of us, people who pay sales tax, property tax, income tax, user fees, and yes, energy taxes as well. I was sitting here preparing to talk on this idea of using California's REACH codes to deny residents the option of using clean burning abundant natural gas. And it hit me as an individual who lives here with my wife and our 4 kids in Santa Barbara County. And I really see this as problematic. And I think Councilmember Harmon brought this up, is that this is actually there's an impact here. And I'm really glad that staff mentioned it. And I'm glad that Councilmember Harmon mentioned it, is that this could be, honestly, it could be dangerous. There are impacts here. If you don't have access to, especially with a power grid that has failed us here in California, I'm concerned about residents having the opportunity to be able to use natural gas. What if we have an earthquake? We have earthquakes frequently in California, particularly in coastal California. What about fires? What about natural disasters? You've got to come up with something that doesn't micromanage the way that families use energy to cook. These are necessities, and during a disaster, you've got to have that opportunity. You can't just take it away. It seems, honestly, it seems that we're not really trusting the residents. So rather than using California's REACH codes to micromanage decision making, I would encourage that we educate folks about the benefits of having a choice between electric and gas, rather than tell them what they can or can't have, because that seems unreasonable. And in addition to education, I would say that you use this opportunity to extol the virtues of natural gas as an abundant, inexpensive alternative to do the things that you need to do. So I've got articles here that talk about the fact that through this pandemic, we haven't seen any reduction in natural gas, in carbon emissions throughout the globe, despite the fact that we've had reduced activity. So I would say that this is also not going to have results. And the final thing I would say is staff, Madam Mayor, I would encourage staff to report on the measurable results that you want to obtain. So what is actually going to happen when you deny folks the chance to put this in their house? What's the actual result? Staff should go back and do the math and come up with more concrete answers before you take it to council.
Thanks for your comments.
Thanks.
Next speaker.
The next speaker is Paul Poirier again. I'll go ahead and unmute you now.
Hi, Paul Poirier talking again, and I'm an architect in town, and I'm working with the AIA California, that's the American Institute of Architects California organization, all the architects in California, and we're working together to share information about decarbonizing our building kind of stock so that we can reduce the carbon emissions in the whole state. Some of the things that the previous speakers said are true. The first thing should be reducing the amount of energy that buildings use through insulation and more efficient windows. But when it comes down to it, you're still going to need to heat some water and heat the space. And currently it can be done at the same price, if not cheaper, with electricity. We did a U.S. Forest Service building in Solvang, all electric. We're remodeling the church at 26 East Gutierrez for Brown and Associates, and we're taking out the gas burning furnaces and replacing it with all electric split systems with heat pumps, like Alelia was talking about. And those end up being smaller units inside the space that heat different areas depending on the load. So if you're not using a conference room, the unit doesn't even have to be on, as opposed to a central system that's always heating and cooling the space and using energy. So from that standpoint, they're a little bit more efficient. You can run multiple little units inside the building off of a large exterior heat pump. And we've done that on a couple of projects where one exterior device, like looks similar to something you'd have for an air conditioner, can run multiple units and has variable speed. So the efficiency and the technology is changing and becoming very efficient. The one thing I wanted to point out from the U.S. Energy Information Administration, which is part of the government, they said that 2019 was like the peak amount of natural gas we've been using. And it's tied to the extraction of oil and fracking, and it's a byproduct of drilling for oil. So if we're going to all electric vehicles by the year 2035, one would suggest that the goal is to reduce the amount of oil we're taking out of the ground, which will go hand in hand with reducing the amount of natural gas we need to use for the buildings and other uses that we're having. There will obviously be some use for natural gas for trucking and some other aspects like that, maybe emergency generators at hospitals, but certainly doesn't have to be the primary source for building hot water and building heating and cooling, because the technology has come so far that really you don't need to do it anymore. Retrofitting buildings a little trickier. If you have a 4-pipe system running through the building, chillers are very expensive to run that on. But for a new building, there should be no issue whatsoever in doing a heat pump all electric system. Thank you very much.
Max, Mr. Poirier, a question if he's still.
Sure.
He's still oh, good. If that's all right with you, Madam Mayor. Okay, thanks. So this is very useful information and very helpful with being involved with the AIA for California. And so I have a question about that resiliency piece with power outages. And is there, I mean, a battery or generator, or what is the sort of current thinking in terms of, I know you're planning for earthquakes, and gas mains breaking is a big deal in an earthquake and causing explosions and fires. So just if that's something that you could comment on from your work with the AIA on those types of plans, so the resiliency piece of that.
Mr. Poirier, are you there?
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought I caught him in time there. I'll follow
I
up
got
with
muted.
him.
Sorry, I was on mute,
Sorry.
but they just unmuted me.
Okay.
The situation is that even if you have a, say, gas-powered furnace or something, it has electronic ignition and it gets plugged in the wall. So if there's a power outage, your gas appliance for the most part won't work either. With electric, if you went with solar to augment that, you would then be able to use things that were on site. So the resiliency component comes down to, it's going to work its way down to city resiliency and independent parcel resiliency. And if you had, say, a Tesla battery on your home, as many people that are in rural areas and currently running on propane are starting to consider, going to all electric with solar panels with Tesla, and then if the grid goes down or there's a power outage from SCE because of weather, they'll cut out the rural areas, and those folks will be fine for a couple of days running off of their independent battery. So that is actually a more resilient way of operating than relying on the gas infrastructure, which could get damaged in an earthquake as well and cause more hazards in terms of broken pipes before the gas can be turned back on. That's, as a SAP safety assessment provider, one of the things we would do after an earthquake is go into a building and make sure that the gas lines are intact, because if you just were to turn the automatic shut off on the gas line on without inspecting it, you could fill your whole building with gas, and there would be a big catastrophe there. So to say that one is safer than the other, they both have their ups and downs. But clearly the economics of doing all electric has come around, and people sooner or later are going to get that. We're doing on multiple different types of buildings, and it seems like the status quo of the way to do an excellent building these days.
Thank you. Very, very helpful commentary. Thank you.
Thanks. More speakers, Mr. Moen?
Next is Ben Schwartz.
Hi, good morning. Yeah, I'm unmuted. All right, great, thanks. First, I wanted to say great presentation. I really appreciated it. I am Ben Schwartz, policy manager from the Clean Coalition, a local nonprofit focused on clean energy and local resilience. I submitted written comments just before the meeting started, so I understand if you don't have them. I just wanted to go over a few things. First is kind of the way that these REACH codes will complement state policy. Existing state policy mandates that all new constructions have solar starting in 2020. And the reason that's important is because current state policy limits the amount of solar that can be put on a new construction or any house to the total electric load of that building. And so depending on the situation, essentially, if you're going to be putting solar on a construction at the beginning of the process when it's built, that's probably going to be the only time that you're going to include solar. You know, you're not going to add more solar panels later on. It's kind of a tough process to do. So you want to be able to size the load as effectively as possible. Including an all-electric REACH code allows you to maximize both energy efficiency and using the largest possible solar panels that can be put on, so sizing it to the greatest solar load. So if you know that you're going to be doing all electric from the start, you can more effectively size the photovoltaic, the solar panels, to the system that you're going to be using. A couple other things. First, on the resilience portion, it was mentioned that natural gas is generally less resilient than electricity in other locations, including a study in San Francisco. Sorry for background noise, by the way. It was found that natural gas takes around 30 times as long as electricity to come back online after an outage. And I just want to add that the Clean Coalition has done studies about community resilience, which can be done with electricity in the region, and I've provided some numbers in the written comments that I included. The one portion that I'll add is that it's important to allow facilities to prepare themselves for individual resilience as well as community resilience, and so that can include guidelines for the costs that facilities will need to prepare themselves for connection to a community microgrid. The type of microgrid that will allow for community resilience. And I just want to suggest that it's important for an all-electric REACH code to occur moving forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Schwartz. Any other commentary?
In terms of public speakers, yes, we have a.
Yeah, public speaker.
We have Art Grimmett. I'll go ahead and unmute you now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Madam Mayor and all your council and those guests in the background, my name is Art Grimmett and I'm with Pentair Pool Products. I'm also a past member of the CPUS, which you have a letter from John Norwood, I believe, to all of you. It talks about the swimming pool industry. I've been before you in the past on the Edison situation. Pentair is the one that developed variable speed pumps for the swimming pool industry, which are now mandated under Title 20. I want to talk a little bit about, and maybe get questions from you if you have any. The swimming pool industry has been moving forward on this very subject for a long time, more than most people know. We actually developed a ultra heater, which has part heat pump and part gas heater. We also have changed the efficiency of our heaters, and we now offer a heater that's 96% efficient, which is the most efficient heater you can now get in the marketplace. But having said that, a lot of homes will look at, well, I could put solar on, which we do on a lot of pools. We put heat pumps on pools. Where we run into the issue in the swimming pool industry is density of water, volume of water, local temperature, and trying to raise a body of water, like right now in a swimming pool, it might be 65 to 70 degrees, up to a swimmable temperature, let's say comfortable of 80, but more so the spa part of the pool picture. If you look at solar, if you look at heat pumps, they do fine until it gets dark, and then they don't do as well. So a person that has a spa has a hard time maintaining that 100+ temperature. Now, you buy portable spas and they plug in, and most of them now are 220. Okay, so you need a 50 amp service to run it. Your dryer runs on 30. I'll give you a kind of example of the amount of draw of this. So you look at the operational cost of it and the less than efficiency of heaters we now have electrically in that respect, which everybody's trying to work for. So I think there needs to be kind of a balance between, okay, can we work on an exemption for this? Because swimming pool heaters aren't running all the time to try to maintain the water as solar might be or a heat pump would have to be. So that efficiency and the additional cost of getting there for some of these people may make it prohibitive for some of these people to get a spa in their pool. Obviously our landscape and the houses we build in Santa Barbara County, and I live in the Santa Barbara County, was raised in Santa Barbara County and went to school here. And so it is costly. If you move out of Santa Barbara, unless you have a good job, you might not get back in. So we have people, and I know John Norwood is more than available. If your members on your different committees would like to have a webinar with him, talk, whatever, you have my information. We're here to try to help you and understand the issue that the swimming pool industry, and it's not just pools, it's barbecues and all the things that go with it, how that affects you.
Thanks, Mr. Gummit. Yeah, we had a detailed letter from Mr. Norwood with all of those details. Thank you so much. Next speaker.
Next speaker is Alex Pujo. And you have to unmute yourself. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, I'm Alex Pujo. I'm in complete support of the staff recommendations. I'm a local architect, as you know, and this is a necessary step to support and achieve the state's goals for greenhouse emissions. And it's important to join all the other jurisdictions that are doing these rich codes, so eventually the state will move forward into the 21st century. The notice that what the staff is proposing is very reasonable as it applies to new construction only. And as other people have spoken, other speakers have said very eloquently, to transition to use to an electric system only is perfectly doable. It's cost effective for new construction. And this will not apply to existing buildings, additions, or alterations such as tenant improvements. And existing appliances will not be affected. So, and even if a building is changes of use, because that's an objection that I heard before. So I'm in total support, and please move forward as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Pujo. Another speaker?
Yes, next speaker is Dennis Allen. I'll go ahead and unmute you now. And if you could unmute yourself as well. Dennis Allen. Okay. Looks like he's not responding at the moment, so I'm gonna move on to the next one, which is Dennis Thompson. If you could.
Good morning. Morning, Madam Mayor and council members. I see the clock is already half down. There we go. Start over again. I'm also an architect and have worked in Santa Barbara for 40 years. I remember seeing a number of gold medallion homes that were popular, I think, in the 70s. And these were all electric homes that achieved their heating, space heating through resistance, electrical resistance. That's probably the most ineffective way to use electricity and the most energy intensive, not to mention the fact that that electricity was probably generated by coal burning power plants somewhere outside of our state. Well, we move beyond that, we move to a cleaner source of energy, which is natural gas. But in fact, natural gas it's cleaner than oil, it's cleaner than coal, but it is a dirty fossil fuel, and it contributes heavily to climate change and all of the attendant problems. So the state has recognized and the city has recognized that we must move away from fossil fuels. The way to do that is electrification. The state codes will eventually be all electric. It's too late for Santa Barbara to be a leader like we used to be, but we might as well do what we can to catch up now and pass this REACH code and join the state. Thank you.
Thanks. And were you Dennis Thompson or Dennis Allen? Sorry.
I am Dennis Thompson.
All right. Okay, good.
Right.
We'll try to find Mr. Allen again. Thanks. Thanks, Mr. Thompson.
Okay, next we have John Norwood.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor and members. As you referred to, I did send in a letter with some detailed comments, and as you're at the beginning of this process, I want to just list a few additional comments as you go forward that you might want to consider. As we indicated, a particular concern is gas heaters. Think especially in the commercial area. When you think about your local high schools, colleges, universities, hotels, motels, condo associations, these type of pools, there is no alternative right now to gas heat other than maybe the hybrid ones that can heat these bodies of water. Heat pump water heaters, ideally the water that comes in is at 80 degrees and the ambient temperature is at 80 degrees. Anything below that, you lose substantial effectiveness, and it results in that example I provided on a competitive pool, which is required to be about 80 degrees, where you take 18 heat pumps versus 5 gas water heaters to do the same job, and those heat pumps will be working 24 hours a day. In the residential setting, the same type of thing applies. You would be, a consumer would have to, with a heat pump water heater, 3.5 hours to heat from, maybe 70 degrees to 102. Gas heaters, maybe 40 minutes. That's going to be a real issue for consumers. Also, a lot of these, you're not just talking about inside appliances, which, electric might work better. You're talking about, as Art said, outside appliances, as barbecues and fire pits and things like that. And I think that consumers aren't going to want you to take the barbecues away from them, frankly. They're either propane, natural gas. There's a lot of natural gas ones. Remodels. You said that they weren't going to apply, but a lot of these apply to remodel situations. If it does apply to remodel situations, the code requires dedicated circuits for refrigerators, cooktops, ovens, microwaves. As was said, a heat pump water heater takes 50 amps. Most of the housing stock in California has 100 amp service, maybe 200 amp service. You're talking about $10,000 to redo the electrical service there. So that's something to look at too. Emissions, yes, natural gas has emissions, but these heat pumps are basically HVAC systems, and the refrigerants also have emissions that are 100 times more potent than natural gas, and they come through leakage, through installation, and things like that. Lastly, the reliability of the grid. We've seen, California is decades. We'll have to spend billions of dollars for decades to get the fire situation under control. To go to all electric, we're talking about expanding the grid, and to take care of renewables, we're talking about putting tens of thousands of lithium-ion batteries in the grid, which are fire hazards themselves. So, those fires wipe out all the savings. Thank you. I know I'm out of time, but those are just some ideas.
Thanks, Mr. Norwood, and thanks for your letter. Next speaker.
Next speaker, we have Jonathan Ullman.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mayor and Council members. My name is John Ullman. I'm the director of the Los Padres chapter of the Sierra Club based in Santa Barbara. We strongly support staff's recommendation to go ahead with a REACH code. 40 municipalities, including San Jose and San Francisco, are phasing out gas. In fact, San Francisco just did it on election day. They did a gas ban. They're not going to be using gas anymore. They're going all electric. Also, Ojai just did it last month. They did an all electric reach code. The cities are doing it for 3 reasons: health, climate, and cost. Health, when you find out what's in natural gas, when you burn it, you are convinced you have to get off of it. Indoor gas releases carcinogens like nitrogen dioxide, carbon monoxide, nitric oxide, and formaldehyde into our lungs. A recent study by UCLA School of Public Health found that when a stove and an oven are used simultaneously for an hour, acute exposure to nitrogen oxide exceeds national and California-based ambient air quality threshold more than 90% of the time. That's what you're breathing in when you're using these appliances in your home or your apartment. The second is climate. Frack gas contributes greatly to record-breaking heat, drought, and wildfires. Methane, which is the primary component of natural gas, is one of the most potent gases with 28 times greater heat trapping gas ability than CO2. The cost. It lowers the average household energy bill by $4,000 to $10,000 over 20 years. It reduces the cost of single-family home construction by $6,000 and the cost of multifamily apartment building construction by nearly $1,500 per unit. The whole argument that SoCal Gas is giving about renewable natural gas, it's a red herring. It's a small fraction of gas demand. Renewable natural gas could only replace 13% of existing demand for fossil fuels in 20 years. Replacing fossil gas with renewable natural gas is extremely costly. Its high production cost means that it ranges from 4 to 17 times more expensive than fossil gas. If they were so excited about doing it, it would have been done by now. This whole argument about, oh, we don't have to phase out natural gas because we're going to renewable, this was all done because they saw the handwriting on the wall. Lastly, I'd like to point out that the exciting thing about all this is solar panels, heat pumps, induction stoves, and batteries. New buildings require AC now because of climate change. Heat pumps are the ideal solution for heating and cooling in Santa Barbara County because they can provide both, and they can do so at an efficient price. Okay, thank you very much.
3 minutes go so fast, thanks. Next speaker.
Next speaker is Karen Feeney. I'll go ahead and unmute you now.
Great, thank you. It's Karen Feeney, Madam Mayor and Councilwoman Sneddon. I work with Allen Construction, who is a local residential building contractor. We're known for our expertise and leadership in green and sustainable building. I also just wanted to mention that Allen Construction was a very active participant in the city's 2008-2011 REACH code efforts. So over the last few months, we've been exploring ways to move our company towards building all electric homes, with the ultimate goal of having all the homes that we build be all electric. And we're doing this for 2 reasons. One is we see this as the future of the building industry. We're concerned about the environmental impacts of our industry and want to do everything we can do to drive our industry forward. Also, we are making this move in order to reduce the carbon emissions of the projects we build. So we're taking 2 steps. The first is we are developing 3 electric home models. This is a paper analysis where we're taking 3 existing homes that we built in the last 5 to 10 years, and we're evaluating the Title 24 requirements, the systems and techniques that would be required if they had been built today as all electric homes. We're also analyzing the additional costs that would be incurred in order to accomplish that. We're going to use this information to share with the architects and clients we work with to advocate to them about building all electric homes and encouraging them to do it. We're also intending to hold public workshops to share our findings. The other activity that we're doing is we currently have a client who asked us to build them an all electric home. And what we're hoping to do is to make this a demonstration home We'll document the systems that were required. Again, look at the costs and monitor the energy used and be able to share that information. Before I close, I wanted to respond to Councilwoman Snedden's comments about exemptions for gas, particularly an exemption for a gas cooktop in a home. The concern that I have about that is you still have to install the gas infrastructure in order to be able to do that. And so the result is that you're reducing the economic incentives for an all-electric home. So that's just something to consider. And in closing, I just want to applaud you for your leadership, and we support the city's efforts to move this all-electric reach code forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Feeney. Nice to hear from you. Any other speakers?
Yes, we have Katie Davis. We have
give us a sense of how many.
3, 4. We have 5 more.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. We have Katie Davis.
Hello, Katie Davis, Chair of the Santa Barbara Sierra Club, representing our thousands of members and supporters in the city of Santa Barbara. And we thank you for bringing this forward, and we absolutely support it. It's been mentioned that Ohio was the 39th city in California to pass
Ms. Davis, you might want to call back in because you fading out big chunks of what you're saying. So, Ms. Moen, can we go to the next speaker and have Ms. Davis call back in?
Yes, absolutely. The next speaker is Michael Chiakos.
Hello, everybody. Michael Chiakos here again, and CEC strongly supports this building electrification reach code. As you heard, you'll join good company of almost 40 other cities, including Ojai and San Francisco in just the last couple weeks. And also the County of Ventura has a building electrification reach code in their climate action plan that was recently passed that they're going to be implementing. You've heard that obviously all electric homes are much more sustainable. In fact, they're the only way to get to a zero emission home in the city of Santa Barbara's carbon neutrality goal. So you need to be considering that. They're also much more affordable, and we have a housing crisis right now with expensive housing in California. And even if we can save a couple $1,000s on a multifamily, $6,000 on a single family, that's you know, a savings that is needed. And they're also much safer, as John Ullman from the Sierra Club pointed out. The most important thing, though, is that we have a climate crisis going on right now. And the #1 rule that when you're in a hole is to stop digging. And we need to stop hooking up new natural gas infrastructure. You know, we hear a lot of arguments here spreading fear that we're gonna be taking away your gas stoves. That's not true at all. This is only for new construction. There's still gonna be tens of thousands of units in Santa Barbara that you can move into, you can remodel, and you could have a gas stove if you want. My hope is that in 5 or 10 years, when people are replacing their water heaters or their gas heaters, they'll see that heat pump technology is here, and that's 85% of the natural gas demand for space and water heating, and that with economics, we'll see, you know, more and more existing buildings converting over to space heaters. The whole RNG item is really a red herring that SoCalGas is putting forward. There's really only a few % of RNG available in California in our landfills and dairies. To get to that 20%, they're stating they need to pull in RNG from many other states. And what if those states want to use their own RNG in the future? And we don't need 20%, we need to get to 100% carbon neutral buildings. So RNG just isn't gonna work. We need to lower our natural gas usage now, and we support this building electrification reach code. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next speaker?
Next speaker is Michael Lopez.
Wow, a mute button. You know how much my mother would have paid for this for the last 50 or 60 years? Good morning, Madam Mayor and fellow council members. Thanks for putting up with me. One more shot across the bow. I've stopped listening to my environmentalist friends and started going back to the IPCC source of record for our greenhouse gas conundrum that we're in. And I think a reality check needs to be made here is that this is expensive, it's inconsistent, it's unreliable, and I think the gentleman before said we tried Medallion Homes in the 70s and it was an absolute belly flop. The idea is that we simply do not have the technology today. In 5 years or 10 years, it may happen. But you guys want to talk about batteries? Let's talk about the amount of gases that get released in the mining of batteries. You want to talk about electric cars? You guys do understand that from the beginning of building an electric car to dismantling that car, your greenhouse gas output is almost identical. So let's look at the technology of gas in homes. And of course, I have a vested interest. Plumbers and pipe fitters, it's stuff that we do, but let's get realistic and look at the cross technologies here. My house was built in 1977. If I had an electric solar panels on my roof, as of today, I would have replaced them at least 3 times because they just don't last. And they don't work when it's dark, they don't work when they're dirty, and they have consistent issues on maintenance that are unbelievably costly. Nobody seems to want to talk about that. And it bothers me when we're disingenuous in our conversations, when we want to actually talk about gas as being a proponent of wildfires. Excuse me, how about electric and wind? Anybody going to go back last year and look at the records on that? Look at, nowhere in history have we ever been able to replace a technology with one that is less efficient, less effective, and just less productive. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to pull that greenhouse gases is going to be the bloody end of the world. I think we need to go back and look at our data and understand. I think a gentleman said early on, if you're going to enact these kinds of things, let's be real clear about who put you in those seats. The people who elected you live in this county. If Santa Barbara was 180% effective in all of these proposals that you're trying to do, what will it do to the world? Because this is a global issue. Do what makes sense. Keep your equipment upgraded. And by the way, there are seismic safety valves on all gas equipment available. If there's an earthquake, they simply shut the gas off. So I challenge you to get educated and keep us in the loop and let us help you any way we can. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Lopez. Next speaker.
Yes, I will go ahead and go back to Katie Davis and try, let's see if, and Katie, it says you're gonna have to enter a PIN, because she's calling in. Let me know if you're able to do that. I'll check back on that. Next speaker would be, it's Michelle Simney.
Okay.
And if you could unmute yourself, thank you so much.
I have. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, council members. I always feel a little bit nervous coming after somebody who yells so much. I'm a local homeowner here in Santa Barbara. I also work in the sustainability sector as a consultant. I'm also a member of the Central Coast Green Building Council, former president of the organization. And I'm going to speak from the perspective of all of those people because I think that they're all representative of the population of Santa Barbara as well. There are a lot of people out there among my clients, residential, commercial clients, who are looking for information about how to do the right thing. I think that what we need is guidance. That's part of what I do professionally, is provide that guidance for my clients, but we're also looking for that guidance from government. And part of that process is providing education and incentives. I applaud this effort to forward the ball down the field toward electrification, toward decarbonizing our energy sector. Buildings do use a lot of energy,
and do put a lot of carbon in the air. And carbon is carbon, whether it's natural gas or renewable natural gas. What we need to do is find technologies and use them that put less carbon in the air. Buildings and electrified buildings are one major way to be successful, to move that ball forward down the field and get people on the right path. I echo Dennis Thompson's and Paul Poirier's and Michael Chiakos's presentations that we need to stop digging the hole as a way to make progress. We aren't gonna change the world in one bill or one act of city council, but we can stop digging the hole that we have been digging and put people on the right path. So I applaud everybody's efforts to make this move, and I support you through the execution of this idea. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks you, Ms. Simney. Next speaker.
Okay. I'm still trying to get Katie Davis. Would you try speaking, Katie? It says an audio pin was just sent to you.
Can you just tell her the pin?
I don't see it. I click the icon and it sends it to her. Okay. I apologize for the. Hello?
That's okay. We know she's supportive of the REACH code recommendation. She's talked to us several times before. We can, sort of guess what she was going to say, but
okay.
Is there anyone else waiting?
The last one would be Dennis Allen, who we were not able to reach earlier before, so I'll try to.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Oh, finally, thanks. Well, I want to start out by saying I'm a general contractor in town, mostly retired now, but I'm a strong proponent of both components that you discussed in this thing, both the no more natural gas hookups and finding ways to move forward the all-electric home. Those are separate, but they can go together, and both are important. And I happen to be blessed with living in an all-electric home. I have for 10 years right downtown, and it is absolutely delightful. It's quiet, it's healthy, and it saves money. People say it's going to be more expensive, but the equipment just keeps getting more efficient. The coefficient of performance every year gets higher, and it's the way we need to be moving forward. We do have a magnetic induction cooktop. That was one of the pieces of equipment that was looked at in the presentation. And I was a big proponent of cooking with natural gas. I love to cook. And I thought, I'm never going to cook on electric. But this is so much more efficient and easy and safe as a way to cook. Our granddaughter, I didn't have to worry about her getting burned by cooking on being around a natural gas stove. So there's so many pluses to it. The other thing I'd like to say is that most of the attention has been on new construction. And I think we really need to put a lot of effort into finding ways to make this work for remodeled projects. And the reason I say that is because most of our buildings in Santa Barbara are existing. They're not going to be new construction. And there is a company mostly operating on the East Coast, but it's trying to go nationwide that I would encourage the city to take a look at. It's called Block Power. And they've found ways to remodel old buildings and with a lot of heat pumps and so forth to make them efficient. And they save the clients money on their gas bills, but they carry the leases on a lot of these buildings for 15 years, and they make money off of it too. So they've found a formula that is working and going forward. So I would urge that. There will be some pushback on this, as we've heard today, from Southern California Gas Company will be pushing back, and some of the people that are involved, the pipe fitters and plumbers that are involved with the infrastructure. But we have to, because of the urgency of this issue, is move as rapidly as possible to being having renewable energy as our main way of functioning in our buildings. The natural gas and the renewable gas should be for our vehicles, our larger vehicles, not for our buildings. Thank you.
Okay, glad we got a hold of you, Mr. Allen. Any luck with Ms. Davis's connection?
Yes, I think so. Katie, can you try speaking now?
Hey, hi, this is Katie. I'll try one last time. I apologize for my internet issues. It also needs to be connected to the internet to talk on the phone, so unfortunate. Okay. I'll try to. I did want to say just quickly. I was mentioning that San Francisco's gas ban, that was an update. They already had an electric reach code, and they decided to go further. So it should give you confidence that, you know, places that have these reach codes are actually strengthening them, so they're not running into issues even in big cities. San Francisco's colder too. Interestingly enough, the plumbers and pipe fitters also supported that reach code in San Francisco. They also have some water piping that they're doing to reuse water. So interestingly, in counties that are not oil counties, there's support even from plumbers and pipe fitters, at least in San Francisco. The other, just personally, I really wish I was in a house with that was all electric. As I've been cooking indoors more during this pandemic, and setting the fire alarm off and everything else, I wish I had an induction. The other thing on fires, speaking of fires, when our street, a bunch of houses burned down in a wildfire, we learned that some of the firefighters didn't come down the street because they were worried that the gas was burning, the gas had broken, and that is an extra hazard. So it would have been nice to not have a gas connection at that point too. It might have saved some of our neighbors' homes. Absolutely support this. The other thing I wanted to mention is Santa Barbara has a goal of 100% renewable energy by 2030. You will achieve that. The whole county is going to get there with as the Community Choice Energy Program, Central Coast Community Energy that's doing Santa Barbara County also has a goal of 100% renewable energy by 2030. So as we have all electric, it will be renewable energy that you're using. My house also has solar and battery, so I can tell you that it's now less expensive to get solar and battery than it was just a few years ago to get solar only. So that is my resilience there, so that's great. In Santa Barbara, our area too, there's an extra $1,000 incentive through Swell Energy because they bid into the contract to not build a new power plant in Oxnard, a new gas power plant. Instead, we have these battery installations, including a network of home batteries. So it's actually less expensive for us to get a home battery, and it helps us not have a natural gas power plant. So that's really cool too. So all this will work together really nicely if we pass this reach code, and just thank you so much for moving it forward.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Any other speakers, Mr. Moen?
There is not. I did want to mention or bring up the, we received some written ones that I forwarded to the various members of the council and the panelists. So I just wanted to quickly mention them just to let them know that their items were received. First is Eric Hoffman, who is the president of the Utility Workers Union of America, the Local 132. The second is John Norwood, Norwood Associates, LLC. The third was from Roy Reed, president of the Santa Barbara County Taxpayers Association. And the fourth was from Ben Schwartz, who had mentioned he's from Clean Coalition. And that one was received, sent just before the meeting, but I have sent that to all panelists.
Okay, thanks. We got all of those. So we'll close public comment and we'll start our conversation. Would you put slide 30 back up? We'll take the timer away. And Ms. Sneddon, you can go ahead with your comments. I thought these next steps would show the participants that there'll be a study session with the council. There's public workshops that engage the stakeholders, public hearings, and then CEC is the California Energy Commission, not the Community Environmental Council, for approval. So there's work to be done in a way. This is a beginning, and certainly will engage everyone who cares on these subjects. So Ms. Sneddon, go ahead, please, with your comments.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This one is one of those issues that is so clear to me. I unwaveringly support moving forward with this. I want to really thank staff. We've asked them to bring this forward, and they've brought it forward with considerations for very respectful considerations for looking at all the different angles on this. I just think that this is one of the biggest issues of our time and for our health and safety, not just in our homes and the air we're breathing, but for future generations with greenhouse gas emissions. I applaud the gas company for SoCalGas for looking for ways to help mitigate with natural gas, but the sources of natural gas are areas that need to be curtailed anyway. And it was very heartening to hear from architects who say that this is not only doable, but is affordable, is within reach, no pun intended there. And I just think it's time that we move forward with this. And as you mentioned, there will be public engagement. There will be a chance for people to contribute to this conversation. It really stuck with me, the comment that Mr. Thompson made, that it's too late for Santa Barbara to be a leader, but that we can catch up now. And I really think we have a responsibility to do that. So absolutely, this should move forward to council for the discussion. So I would make the motion. I'm not sure if there's just the two of us here. Do we make a motion and a second and vote? But I will make the motion to recommend that we forward this to council for the development of an all-electric reach code. I do think that we could consider public benefit pools, not individual home pools for exemption, but those, one of the speakers talked about at colleges or large areas, maybe just a consideration of that, but not if it's a new construction. So anything in new construction, I don't see us furthering the infrastructure for the gas lines. And I'm a firm believer that we set the goal, and then we set about meeting that goal, and the rest will come. It's really, I think, time to prioritize this. We'll get to the education and incentives and of course in community outreach, but yeah, I'm ready to just make the wholehearted motion to move this forward to council.
I'll second the motion, and I'll acknowledge that Ms. Harmon did indicate as she signed off, and she had to go for good reason, that she was supportive as well. And I get it that this is painful for some individuals and some industries, and that we would have a conversation about transitioning and how to get to a place with the least amount of pain as possible for people. I do appreciate Mr. Mahoney's and his organization's efforts. I'm respectful of the pool and spa industry and other considerations. I know, someone talked about the university, but they have set a goal too, at least UC Santa Barbara, to reduce their carbon footprint. And so this ties in with the items earlier today about regional work. And I'm wholeheartely supportive too. We need to get to this place. And I love the way we're setting up the community conversation to make sure that we hear from everyone. And I'm certainly not cynical about community choice energy. There was some some information that was forwarded to us about that. And so we set a very ambitious goal for the city of Santa Barbara, and I do see this as part of the effort to get there. And I'm inspired. And so we'll take a roll call vote of the two of us, Mr. Moen.
Mayor Maria?
Aye.
Councilmember Sneddon?
Yes.
Okay, and so we moved this recommendation to develop an electric reach code. Okay, so thank you to everyone who participated. The conversation continues, as I said. Ms. Parento, are there any closing comments from you? And I will pull up the agenda real quick. I think this was our last item.
Madam Mayor, yes, this was our last item. And the only final comment I would provide is that we are working with the Association of Realtors as well as the Santa Barbara Contractors Association. Will be presenting to their membership in the new year. And we will continue to engage other stakeholders. We're working with the some of the union organizations. We're hoping to really make sure everyone feels heard and is considered in the development of these code enhancements.
Is there a date or any time frame that we can give the participants today? When we're coming back or when something might happen next?
So we currently have the study session for council agendized for January 12th. So that'll be the initial, again, educational discussion with council. No decision will be made that day. And I don't have dates for the Contractors Association or Realtors Association meetings yet, but they are going to be in January, ideally before that January 12th date. So we will make sure that the Sustainability Department announces those on our social media feeds and as well on our website and to the interested parties on our sustainability interested parties list.
Okay, and so you're ready to let people know when things are happening. So thank you for that.
Yes.
With thanks to the staff and the public who participated today and to my committee members, thank you. And this meeting is adjourned. Thanks.
Thank you.